Hi friends, welcome to the new episode. As you already know that I make videos on famous personalities and their life stories. The format of this video is made in such a way that you have to read the story looking at your screen in your mind, and simultaneously I'll be narrating that story and you have to listen it. The benefit of this method is the process of listening and reading at the same time, and it makes us understand the story more clearly. It helps us remembering it. For students, this is very useful. For other viewers, it will help in clear understanding of the story. As you know, pronunciations of different people varies, and the understanding hampers because of that. So this format, you can see in your screen, you can see the writings. So by the time I am reading aloud, you have to listen it and you have to read it in your mind along with me. So as the thumbnail shows, today's story is about the life story of Steve Jobs, the person who revolutionized the tech industry and changed our way of life. Before I begin, do subscribe if you are new to this channel. Let's begin the story. You can start reading in the mind while I speak aloud. Steve Jobs' biography. Steve Jobs was an American businessman, an inventor who played a key role in success of Apple computers and the development of revolutionary new technology such as the iPod, iPad and MacBook. Story of his early life. Steve Jobs was born in San Francisco in 1955 to two university students, Joanne Schieble and Syrian-born Jandali. They were both unmarried at the time, and Stephen was given up for adoption. Stephen was adopted by Paul and Clara Jobs, whom he always considered to be his real parents. Stephen's father Paul encouraged him to experiment with electronics in their garage. This led to a lifelong interest in electronics and design. Jobs attended a local school in California and later enrolled at Reed College, Portland, Oregon. His education was characterized by excellent test results and potential, but he struggled with formal education and his teachers reported he was a handful to teach. At Reed College, he attended a calligraphy course which fascinated him. He later said this course was instrumental in Apple's multiple typefaces and proportionally spaced fonts. In these photos we can see Steve Jobs when he was young, along with his Apple computer. Let's see when Steve Jobs traveled to India. This is another fascinating story, but I'll give you in a brief. In 1974, Jobs traveled with Daniel Kotke to India in search of spiritual enlightenment. They traveled to the ashram of Neem Karoli Baba in Kainchi. During his several months in India, he became aware of Buddhist and Eastern spiritual philosophy. At this time, he also experimented with psychedelic drugs. He later commented that these counterculture experiences were instrumental in giving him a wider perspective on life and business. Bill Gates, be broader guy if he had dropped acid once or gone off to an ashram when he was younger. Steve Jobs, The New York Times, Creating Jobs, 1997. This was one of the quotes on Steve Jobs by Bill Gates. Jobs' first real computer job came working for Atari computers. During his time at Atari, Jobs came to know Steve Wozniak well. Jobs greatly admired this computer technician whom he had first met in 1971. Here we can see Jobs along with his Apple computer on the background. Story of inventions, Steve Jobs and Apple. In 1976, Wozniak invented the first Apple I computer. Jobs, Wozniak and Ronald Wayne then set up Apple computers. In the very beginning, Apple computers were sold from Jobs' parents' garage. Over the next few years, Apple computers expanded rapidly as the market for home computers began to become increasingly significant. In 1984, Jobs designed the first Macintosh It was the first commercially successful home computer to use a graphical user interface based on Xerox PARC mouse driver interface. This was an important milestone in home computing, and the principle has become key in later home computers. As you know, no one can stay without a mouse. If there is a computer, there has to be a mouse. But remember the old days when there is not used to be a mouse, everything has to be with the keys. So you can imagine how much big breakthrough was using a mouse in the computers. Okay, let's begin the next narration. Despite the many innovation successes of Jobs at Apple, there was increased friction between Jobs and other workers at Apple. In 1995, removed from his managerial duties, Jobs resigned and left Apple. He later looked back on this incident and said that getting fired from Apple was one of the best things that happened to him. It helped him regain a sense of innovation and freedom. He couldn't find work in a large company. Steve Jobs' life after Apple. In this photo you can see Steve Jobs and Bill Gates. These photos are just for the representation. On leaving Apple, Jobs founded Next Computers. This was never particularly successful, failing to gain mass sales. However, in 1990s, Next software was used as framework in web objects used in Apple Store and iTunes Store. In 1996, Apple bought Next for $429 million. Much more successful was Jobs' foray into Pixar, a computer graphic film production company. Disney contacted Pixar to create films such as Toy Story, A Bug's Life, and Finding Nemo. If you have not seen these movies, definitely I suggest you to watch it. These were first of its kind of 3D animated movies which captured the global market and were instant hits. These animation movies were highly successful and profitable, giving Jobs respect and success. In 1996, the purchase of Next brought Jobs back to Apple. He was given the post of chief executive at the time. Apple had fallen way behind rivals such as Microsoft, and Apple was struggling to even make a profit. When Steve Jobs returned to Apple, Jobs launched Apple in a new direction with certain degree of ruthlessness. Some projects were summarily ended instead. Instead, Jobs promoted the development of a new wave of products which focused on accessibility, appealing design, and innovative features, which you can still see in the Apple products. The iPod was a revolutionary product in that it built an existing portable music devices and set the standard for portable digital music. In 2008, iTunes became the second biggest music retailer in the US with over 6 billion songs downloaded and over 200 million iPods sold. In terms of 2008, this number is staggering. In 2007, Apple successfully entered the mobile phone market with the iPhone. This used features of the iPod to offer a multifunctional and touchscreen device to become one of the best-selling electronic products. In 2010, he introduced the iPad, a revolutionary new style of tablet computers. iPad, iPod, iPhone. These products were such products which every computer enthusiast and the people loving in technology would always wish to have in those days. And the story continues till today. Today also, Apple have the same fan following. The design philosophy of Steve Jobs was to start with a fresh slate and imagine a new product that people would want to use. This contrasted with alternative approach of trying to adapt current models to consumer feedback and focus groups. Jobs explains his philosophy of innovative design. Let's see his quote. But in the end, for something this complicated, it's really hard to design products by focus groups. A lot of time people don't know what they want until you show it to them. Steve Jobs in Business Week of 1998. This is another photo of Steve Jobs in his youth. Apple has been rated number 1 in America's most admired companies. Jobs' management has been described as inspirational. Although C workers also state Jobs could be hard taskmaster and was temperamental. Next co-founder Dan Daniel Levin was quoted in Fortune as saying of that period, "The highs were unbelievable, but the lows were unimaginable." From All About Steve Jobs quotes, "My job is not to be easy on people. My job is to take these great people we have and to push them and make them even much better." Indeed, he has done his job very well. Under Jobs, Apple managed to overtake Microsoft regarding share capitalization. Apple also gained a preeminent reputation for the development and introduction of groundbreaking technology. Interview in 2007, Jobs said, "There is an old Wayne Gretzky quote that I love. I skate to where the puck is going to be, not where it has been. And we have always tried to do that at Apple since the very, very beginning, and we will. We always will." Despite growing ill health, Jobs continued working at Apple until August 2011 when he resigned. Let's see how much wealth he has made. His net worth. In 2011, Forbes estimated the majority of Steve Jobs' net worth at around $6.5 billion to $7 billion. From his sale of Pixar to Walt Disney Company in 2006. However, if Jobs had not sold his Apple shares in 1985 when he left the company he founded and helmed for over a decade, his net worth would have been a staggering $36 billion. Jobs earned only $1 million as CEO of Apple, but share options from Apple and Disney gave him an estimated fortune of $8.3 billion. Some more details of his personal life. Let's know about his wife and children. Steve Jobs and Lauren Powell married on March 18, 1991. The pair met in the early 1990s at Stanford Business School, where Powell was an MBA student. They lived together in Palo Alto, California, with their 3 children. About daughter. Although he remained a private man who rarely disclosed information about his family, it is known that Jobs fathered a daughter, Lisa, with girlfriend Syrian-born when he was 23. He denied paternity of his daughter in court documents, claiming he was sterile. Krishnan struggled financially for much of his life, and Jobs did not initiate a relationship with his daughter until she was 7 years old. When she was a teenager, Lisa came to live with his father. When Steve Jobs was young, Joanne Schieble, later John Simpson, and Abdul Fattah, John Jandali, 2 University of Wisconsin graduate students, gave up their unnamed son, Steve Jobs, for adoption. Jobs' father Jandali was a Syrian political science professor, and his mother Schieble worked as a speech therapist. Shortly after Steve was placed for adoption, his biological parents married and had another child, Mona Simpson. It was not until Jobs was 27 that he was able to uncover information on his biological parents. As an infant, Jobs was adopted by Clara and Paul Jobs and named Stephen Paul Jobs. Clara worked as an accountant and Paul was Coast Guard veteran and machinist. The family lived in Mountain View, California, within the area that would later become known as Silicon Valley. Indeed, the place Silicon Valley today is having the startup capital fame. As a boy, Jobs and his father worked on electronics in the family garage. Paul showed his son how to take apart and reconstruct electronics, a hobby that instilled confidence, tenacity, and mechanical prowess in young Jobs. Let's see his educational qualifications. While Jobs was always an intelligent and innovative thinker, his youth was riddled with frustrations over formal schooling. Jobs was prankster in elementary school due to boredom, and his 4th grade teacher needed to bribe him to study. Jobs tested so well, however, that administrators wanted to skip him ahead to high school, a proposal that his parents declined. After high school, Jobs enrolled at Reed College in Portland, Oregon. Lacking direction, he dropped out of college after 6 months and spent the next 18 months dropping in on creative classes at the school. Jobs later recounted how one course in calligraphy developed his love of typography. In 1974, Jobs took a position as a video game designer with Atari. Several months later, he left the company to find spiritual enlightenment in India, traveling further and experimenting with psychedelic drugs. About Steve Wozniak. When Jobs was enrolled at Homestead High School, he was introduced to his future partner and co-founder of Apple Computer, Steve Wozniak, who was attending the University of California, Berkeley. In 2007 interview with PC World, Wozniak spoke about why he and Jobs clicked so well. We both loved electronics and the way we used to hook up digital chips. Wozniak said, very few people, especially back then, had an idea what chips were, how they worked, and what they could do. I had designed many computers, so I was way ahead of him in electronics and computer design, but we still had common interests. We both had pretty much sort of an independent attitude about things in the world. On Apple Computer. In 1976, when Jobs was just 21, he and Steve Wozniak started Apple Computers in the Jobs family garage. They funded their entrepreneurial venture by Jobs selling his Volkswagen bus and Wozniak selling his beloved scientific calculator. Gone are those days when by selling scientific calculator and Volkswagen bus, you can start a startup in computers. Let's read. Jobs and Wozniak are credited with revolutionizing the computer industry with Apple by democratizing the technology and making machines smaller, cheaper, intuitive, and accessible to everyday consumers. Wozniak conceived of a series of user-friendly personal computers, and with Jobs in charge of marketing, Apple initially marked the computers for $666.66 each only. Some people say 6 is a lucky number, so is it the reason they kept the price as 666.66? God knows. The Apple I earned the corporation around $774,000 3 years after the release of Apple's second model. The Apple II, the company sales increased by 700% to $139 million. In 1980, Apple Computers became a publicly traded company with a market value of $1.2 billion. By the end of its very first day of trading, Jobs looked to marketing expert John Scully of Pepsi-Cola to take over the role of CEO for Apple. The next several products for Apple suffered significant design flaws. However, resulting in recalls and consumer disappointment, IBM suddenly surpassed Apple in sales, and Apple had to compete with an IBM PC-dominated business world. In 1984, Apple released the Macintosh, marketing the computer as a piece of a counterculture, lifestyle, romantic, youthful, creative. But despite positive sales and performance superior to IBM's PCs, the Macintosh was still not IBM's compatible. Scully believed Jobs was hurting Apple, and the company's executives began to phase him out. Not actually having had an official title with the company he co-founded, Jobs was pushed into a more marginalized position and thus left Apple in 1985. So the company which he started, he is out of the company in 1985. So as we say, these are the inspirational stories. Never give up. Let's know about the world famous Pixar. As we already know about the movies like Finding Nemo, Toy Story, is the same Pixar. In 1986, Jobs purchased an animation company from George Lucas, which later became Pixar Animation Studios. Believing in Pixar's potential, Jobs initially invested $50 million on his own money in the company. The studio went on to produce widely popular movies such as Toy Story, Finding Nemo, and The Incredibles. Pixar's family have collectively netted $4 billion US. The studio merged with Walt Disney in 2006, making Steve Jobs Disney's largest shareholder. Founding next. Here we can see Steve Jobs while giving a talk, and backside there is a Next logo. After leaving Apple in 1985, Jobs began a new hardware and software enterprise called Next, Inc. The company floundered in its attempts to sell its specialized operating system to mainstream America, and Apple eventually bought the company in 1996 for $429 million. In 1997, Jobs returned to his post as Apple CEO. Just as Jobs instigated Apple's success in the 1970s, he is credited with revitalizing the company in the 1990s. When he reinvented Apple, Now this is the time which we are waiting for. With a new management team, altered stock options, and a self-imposed annual salary of just $1 a year, Jobs put Apple back on track. Jobs' ingenious products like the iMac, effectively branding campaigns and stylish designs caught the attention of consumers once again. In the ensuing years, Apple introduced such revolutionary products as the MacBook Air, iPod, and iPhone, all of which dictated the evolution of technology. Almost immediately after Apple released a new product, competitors scrambled to produce comparable technologies. I think this is the time when we saw people copying iPhones and making the touchscreen smartphones. Here we can see Steve Jobs with his MacBook. Apple's quarterly reports improved significantly in 2007. Stocks were worth $199.99 a share, a record-breaking number at that time, and the company boasted a staggering $1.58 billion profit, an $18 billion surplus in the bank, and zero debt. A company with zero debt is always a safe company, and investors always invest in such companies. In 2008, Apple became the second biggest music retailer in America, second only to Walmart. Fueled by iTunes and iPod sales, Apple has also been ranked number 1 on Fortune magazine's list of America's most admired companies, as well as number 1 among Fortune 500 companies for returns to shareholders. Here is Steve Jobs with his iPad. His battle with cancer. Like all good stories, have ups and downs, and some good people get a bad fate or a misfortune. The same thing happened with Steve Jobs. In 2003, Jobs discovered that he had neuroendocrine tumor, a rare but operable form of pancreatic cancer. Instead of immediately opting for surgery, Jobs chose to alter his pesco-vegetarian diet while weighing Eastern treatment options. For 9 months, Jobs postponed surgery, making Apple's board of directors nervous. Executives feared that shareholders would pull their stock if word got out that the CEO was ill. But in the end, Jobs confidently took precedence over shareholders' disclosure. In 2004, he had a successful surgery to remove the pancreatic tumor. True to form, in subsequent years, Jobs disclosed little about his health. From what I have read about Steve Jobs, what I can say is Steve Jobs was a very positive thinking person and always welcomed the defeat and the wins with the same level. I think that makes any successful person a special person when a person knows and have ability to digest the bitter truths of life. Early in 2009, reports circulated about Jobs' weight loss. Some predict his health issues had returned. His weight loss we can see from these photos as well. But we can see his genius mind still work in progress and giving his 100%. Some predicting his health issues had returned. Early in 2009, reports circulated about Jobs' weight loss, some predicting his health issues had returned, which included early liver transplant. Jobs responded to these concerns by stating he was dealing with hormone imbalance. Days later, he went on a 6-month leave to absence. In an email message to employees, Jobs said his health-related issues are more complex than he thought, then named the Tim Cook, Apple's chief operating officer, as responsible for Apple's day-to-day operations. At last, final years. After nearly a year out on the spotlight, Steve Jobs delivered a keynote address at an invite-only Apple event on September 9, 2009. He continued to serve as master of ceremonies, which included the unveiling of the iPad through much of 2010. However, in January 2011, Jobs announced he was going on medical leave. In August, he resigned as CEO of Apple, handing the reins to Cook, and in October, he died. Steve Jobs died in Palo Alto on October 5, 2011, after battling pancreatic cancer for nearly a decade. He was 56 years old that time. But I feel in the brief time of 56 years, he have achieved a great deal of work which many of people has working for whole life are unable to achieve. But his life of 56 years old was really incredible and has given a hope to anyone who is struggling in their lives. Steve Jobs is buried in an unmarked grave at Alta Mesa Memorial Park, a non-sectarian cemetery in Palo Alto. What was Steve Jobs' last words? Everyone is eager to know about that. I know that. In Mona Simpson's eulogy for Steve Jobs, his sister said, Steve Jobs looked at his sister Patty, kids and wife, then said his last words, "Oh wow, oh wow, oh wow." Steve Jobs' life story ended here, but his legacy still remains. Many movies and books were released after his death. So let us see movies and books that released after his death. Several movies inspired by the computer icon's life have been released as well, namely the critically panned Jobs in 2013 starred Ashton Kutcher and Steve Jobs, 2015 starring Michael Fassbender and directed by Danny Boyle. The same Danny Boyle who directed the Oscar-winning Slumdog Millionaire. A number of books have also been written on Jobs' life and career, including an authorized 2011 general biography by Walter Isaacson. The book was critiqued for depiction of its main subject by Apple chief executive Tim Cook, who succeeded Jobs. Karen Blumenthal also wrote a 2012 young adult biography, and Brent Schindler and Rick Tedeschi wrote 2015 Becoming Steve Jobs. I suggest you to read some of these books and watch these movies to have greater perspective. In addition to his earliest interest in Eastern religions, Jobs expressed sentiments of agnosticism. In his quote in the biography of Walter Isaacson, "Sometimes I believe in God, sometimes I don't. I think it's 50-50 maybe. But ever since I have had a cancer, I have been thinking about it more, and I find myself believing a bit more. Maybe it's cause I want to believe in an afterlife. That's when you die, it doesn't just all disappear. Yes, when we are in trouble, definitely we want someone to help us in our troubled time. So it seems same thing is happening with Steve Jobs here. So this was his life journey. I would like to tell some of his facts to remember from his life journey. You must have seen that growing up, Steve Jobs had a hard time with formal schooling due to boredom and often had to be bribed to do his work by his teachers. One of Jobs' first job was with Atari as a video game designer. So all the designers out there, you never know you can be the next Steve Jobs. If Jobs had not sold his Apple shares in 1985 when he left the company he founded for over a decade, his net worth would have been a staggering $36 billion. But no wonder. As you know, everything happens for a reason, and whatever happens, it happens for the good. So this was the life story of Steve Jobs in short. This was the personality who lived his life with simplicity, with minimalistic needs, yet gave profound life message, which transcended in all age groups. His out-of-the-box ideas makes us wonder how creatively blessed individual Steve was His last days of life gave us a strong message that no matter how much knowledge we gained in this lifetime, it's not enough. I remember a quote that the day we understand that we don't know anything is the beginning of knowing something. With that note, do like and share this video with your near and dear ones, and do subscribe for more upcoming updates. This is my video from the video series. I'll be making more of such videos, so stay tuned and share this video with your loved ones so that they can also listen the stories. I'll try to make stories more interesting in the upcoming videos and enhance the video's style. If you have liked the video, do like it, as it motivates me to make more videos. Thank you very much for all the subscribers and all the viewers. God bless you all and have a nice day. Thank you.